Hi, everyone. This is Keisha Pollock. Thanks for joining. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. If you can mute your line, about 1 more minute. Keisha Pollock at Johns Hopkins. I hope everybody's doing well today. Thanks for joining this month's PAPRN Plus. I want to begin, as we usually do, with asking Tom Schmidt from the CDC or affiliated with the CDC, and I don't know how you describe yourself these days, Tom, but to provide any updates you have for us.
Yeah, this is Tom Schmidt, continuing government employee, which as of, I think it was last night, means we'll all get paid because we do have a budget for at least through December. And the only thing I'd like to mention is I participating in the dissemination implementation meeting. I came back, I talked to people about it here, and they're pretty excited. We're going to pursue trying to get some funding, some minor funding, to maybe perhaps convene a roundtable around the topic with specific interest in kinds of activities that PAPRN Plus and physical activity are doing. We recognize that a lot of the PAPRN studies and that the literature, the science is not quite there yet for a lot of the dissemination implementation, and we want to think through how we can move things along the pipeline. So I'll be getting back to you guys with some more information once we know more. That's really pretty much it.
Great news, Tom. Thanks for pursuing funds to have a small roundtable on exploring this issue. That's really great.
While we're still on it, what we want is eventually to be a junior partner with NIH in funding that kind of research. We just don't think physical activity is there yet to be very competitive. So we want to understand how, we want to think through a strategy to make our research more competitive so we can get the big money.
Great. Thank you. Well, we want the big money, so I look forward to continuing to engage with you on that. Do you have any other updates from chronic disease group or anything, or was that it?
Oh, I think I mentioned before there, one of our divisions, the Division of Community Health, has been dissolved or stood down, whatever the phrase is, but the meaning is that PITCH, which is one of the sub-grants, will be continuing for 1 more year and then will be phased out. And REACH, which is Racial and Ethnic Approaches to Community Health, is a long-standing program that's going to be joining our division. And I think I mentioned the last time that that means that the people that are doing the REACH work will be working with us, but means we'll have a closer connection to what they're doing and maybe some insights into how PAPRN kinds of activities could be integrated into what they're doing, or could be sources for some information. Okay. That's all happening right now, so it's very much in flux.
Great. Maybe we can get them on a future call to talk, whoever runs that program, to talk more about what they're doing so people can be more aware.
Yeah, and the operative thing is whoever's running that program, it's still very much in limbo.
Right. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. All right. So thanks again, Tom. Just a couple of other updates before we transition to our presenter. The first thing I want to say is that please be on the lookout for an email inviting those of you who are going to be at APHA to a reception. Together, NOPRN and PAPRN are co-sponsoring a networking reception on the Sunday of APHA, and we're doing it from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Convention Center. And so this is something that we are supporting with non-governmental funds just because we think it's important for people to get together. So I'll be sending, or Eric will send out an email from PAPRN Plus, the coordinating center, with some information on this, and asking you to RSVP to me. We'll have some snacks there and some non-alcoholic beverages. And we look forward to those of you who are interested in meeting colleagues from NOPRN and other colleagues at PAPRN Plus to get together. Amanda, I sent you a note and wondering if you had a moment to give an update on the working groups before Kate presents, or even it could be afterwards if that's better.
Sure. No, I have a few updates. The first update is that maybe this is more of an open mic item, but the call for abstracts for ALR closes tomorrow. I'll get the exact time of that, when it closes, but that is for the research and practice policy abstracts. The workshop deadline has passed, but we encourage you to obviously submit your work, and we'll be discussing internally some kind of meeting at ALR, and we'll be in touch about that a bit later. So hopefully we'll see many of you there. So a quick update on the working groups. We've obviously we all came together with the leaders in DC at the dissemination and implementation meeting, and had a great discussion, and have had several calls with the working group since then. Our goal moving forward is to have at least one product out of each working group by the end of the year, and I think we're making good progress towards doing that. A couple of the groups are already working on some collaborative papers, and a lot of them are in the process of launching some other subgroup committees. So if you're not already involved in the working groups, I definitely encourage you to reach out to us, and can give you an update on where things are and what some of those subgroup topic areas are. So really starting to try to convene that, and thanks to the working group leaders for keeping the ball rolling. And I know it was a slow start, but we're really starting to formulate some collaborative projects. So again, if you're interested, reach out to us to join any of those working groups. And I think that's it for now.
Okay.
I don't know if any of the leaders on the call from the working groups have any specific updates or not.
This is Jana. Hello?
We can hear you.
Keisha, great.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So the older adult working group, we're excited that I think probably the most recent upcoming thing that is going to happen is we're presenting at the Gerontology Society of America in New Orleans in November. And so maybe that'll also help expand our network to try to get some more of the aging people who might be interested in walking and walkability to join PAPRN Plus. And that's in collaboration with the Complete Streets group.
Awesome. Thank you, Jana, for sharing that. Great news. All right, and we'll have more time too at the end or an open mic for more updates, and we will talk a little bit more about this D&I meeting. I do want to make another plug for all of you to submit abstracts to ALR. The meeting's in Florida at the end of February. Is that right? Is the first date? I should know this.
Yep, February 26th through March 1st.
Great, thank you, Amanda. So if you're interested in going in that meeting, which is always a terrific one, is in Clearwater Beach, Florida, again, instead of San Diego, which might make it a little bit easier for some of you to get there. Please go ahead and submit your abstracts. So let's just go ahead and turn to our presenters, and then we'll come back to some more updates. I am just absolutely thrilled that today we have two individuals from America Walks to present to us, Kate Kraft, the Executive Director, and Kristen Henry, who's the Program Coordinator. And they're going to talk with us today about America Walks and about the sort of efforts to measure the national walking movement. So let me turn it over to Kate.
Thank you, Keisha. It's really a pleasure for us to be here. We had the privilege recently of working with both PAPRN Plus and ALR to put on the dissemination and implementation meeting, and so I hope we get to do more of those kinds of things. It was great. And I'm here with my colleague, Kristen Henry, and as Keisha said, we're going to do three things in our talk, and I'm going to apologize up front for any technology glitches because I am in a building with very limited connectivity, so hopefully this is going to go okay. It just might be a little awkward with the slides since I can't see them. But we'll talk about America Walks, we'll talk about what we're doing around the country, and then we really engage you in a conversation about measuring the walking movement. My first slide that talks about America Walks, let me just tell you that we were founded in 1996 when 6 walking advocacy groups came together to find ways to support each other. Then being a pedestrian advocate was pretty lonely work and pretty much non-existent in most places. Walking, unlike biking, which has had decades of industry support to cultivate a walking movement, walkers actually don't consider themselves part of a movement on walks. It seems natural. It seems a part of everyone's life. And it's taken quite a bit for people to realize that in order to create safe walkable places, requires a certain kind of advocacy. So in 1996, these 6 lone voices came together and said they created this platform for local walking advocates to speak with each other and to sort of support each other. Currently, fast forward, we currently count around 700 local and state organizations as part of the walking movement. We act as a voice for them, and we provide leadership for the national walking. I think the next slide is, if you go to our local activity, the primary focus of our work is really supporting, educating, and developing local walking organizations and networks. We provide a lot of online training and webinars. We conduct a walking college that includes an intensive online training and mentorship program for selected fellows. We develop and distribute resources, toolkits, and sort of self-help focused material for local walking advocates. We also maintain a peer-to-peer America Walks forum for walking professionals to post questions, share good ideas, look for new solutions. In a way, it works a little bit like an early warning system so that we can kind of see what are the new issues emerging with the walking advocacy world. We also award 10 to 15 micro grants each year. These are small, sort of $1,500 to $2,500 awards to local organizations to support local walking efforts and trying to build up the local walking group. I would say our signature event is the National Walking Summit. I believe a little bit later on we have a slide on this, but we got the 3rd one in 2017, and this is really an opportunity for walking advocates and champions to come together and share successes, learn about new research and technology, and to continue to develop a collective voice. This year, or next year, we're going to be in St. Paul, Minnesota in September of 2017. The theme is Vital and Vibrant Communities, the Power of Walkability. And just to give a shameless plug, our call for proposals is currently out. And when you see the slide, I'll give you where you can. If many of you.
Okay, we lost you, breaking up a bit. Kristen, are you on the phone? Do you want to take over, or?
I am here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We lost Kate. I think she's getting bad signal where she's at.
Yeah, it sounds like it. There you are.
Oh.
Yeah, we lost you, Kate, when you started talking about the summit. Yeah, if you want to repeat what you said about the summit, we lost you.
I'm sorry. The theme. We have a call currently out. Research and projects in our program. And if you go to the area of work is
Okay. Feels like we lost Kate again. So yeah, Kristen, I don't know if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about the summit and then take over until we get Kate back, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. You can hear me okay?
Yep, we hear you great. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So as Kate was saying about the summit, the theme is Vital and Vibrant Communities, the Power of Walkability. Towards the end of this presentation, I've got a quick slide that tells you where you can go to submit any proposals that you might want to submit. But quickly, it's just walkingsummit.org. So all the information is on there if you're interested in finding out more about the summit. But that's kind of our big thing that we're working on, and we're kind of pushing towards that right now. And I can kind of continue on with the conversation here if Kate's struggling a little bit. What slide do you have up in front of you right now?
We have,
can you hear?
We have the implementing the call to action slide. Kate, now we can hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry about this. I'm in the transportation building, and I guess they don't really want us communicating with the outside world. The implementation action is really just some of the work that we action to work with regions to coordinate the work of the multiple walking advocacy organizations within those regions and connect them with their local federal agency to work on implementation of the call to action, which is a year old, and there will be a commemoration of that next month, including a report from the CDC on of the call to action during the last year. So that's exciting for us. In the next slide, if you skip to the slide on the national walking movement, let me go there in case I lose my connection again. This is the second area of our work, and it's really as the managing partner of the Everybody Walk Collaborative, which is a national partnership of diverse organizations that cuts across multiple disciplines of people working in getting people to work collectively to promote walking and walkability. The primary objective is to really increase the visibility of walking and walkability. We do a number of things. We conduct monthly social media walking promotion. We've lifted up stories about walking champions, and I believe there's a slide showing the ebook, America's Walking Renaissance, that is in this deck that you could see, and that's online. And we've also worked closely with the Surgeon General to promote the call to action on walking and walkability or walkable communities. There are 3 projects, I think the next slide, that we're currently working on, and we're going to discuss one of those today. One is the development and testing of social justice messages and a toolkit for creating a narrative about walking as a right. That has been beta tested and is online and is being currently picked up by many of our walking advocates on, how to talk about walking as a right. We're conducting research on gentrification and the mitigation of displacement and what walking advocates can do about it, or what they need to know in doing this work. And that's a long conversation that we could have. It's exciting and interesting work, but really hard work. And then the third project is developing walking movement indicators. This is really developed as part of a larger picture of measurement where we've been working with the National Physical Activity Plan on their walking report card, which is under development. We've connected with the YMCA and Safe Routes to School National Partnership, who developed the state policy report card on walking and walkability. These indicators are being looked at as part of the movement aspect of walking, to look at the demand, if you will. And with that, I will turn it to my colleague, Kristen, who's going to walk through what we've done so far with walking movement indicators, and hopefully we'll have a little time for a discussion. Kristen?
Thanks, Kate, and thank you so much for having us on this call today. I really appreciate the opportunity to get this in front of a new set of eyes. So just as a little bit of information before I ask you to put your thinking caps on and walk through some of this stuff with me. But this project, it really aims to create a list of indicators that can be used to measure the walking movement. And I'll explain to you a little bit about how we define that in a moment. But we want to look at it as it exists now, as it grows, as it changes, And from these indicators, we're going to collect baseline data and present a report on what we're calling the state of the walking movement. And these indicators were created with the thought that we'll be able to use this in future coordinated actions, and we'll revisit this over time and see how things are changing. And so this began with the recruitment of a work group through the Everybody Walk Collaborative that Kate mentioned just a little while ago. And this group of professionals came together with us to kind of share ideas around how to define the walking movement and how to measure it. Because the movement itself was a little bit unique and hadn't really been defined in a way that we found useful. So this first slide that I have for you is entitled Social. So we started out by looking at definitions of a social movement. So things like Mothers Against Drunk Driving and, a movement to change tobacco laws. So all these different things we looked at and how they were defined and how they were unique and what aspects of them were important to making it a movement. And we determined whether or not walking fit into that definition and what made the walking movement unique. So there's a document that was created by the Institute of Medicine from a 2014 event that they did, and it was something we found really useful. It broadly defined social movements and showed that they're all very different. And so these are just some of the ways that had been defined previously. And this is kind of where we started from and then began to look at walking specifically. So as part of that process, we defined the walking movement as a social movement. Some of the key aspects of the walking movement that would fit within the definitions that we found. And so on the next slide, you'll see how we define the walking movement and a little bit more about what those key things are. So there's indicators of this movement at all levels. So from individual to societal, organizational, there are indicators of walking and the walking movement. And for example, organizations like Girl Track, they uniquely empower women in a specific community to take back their neighborhoods, streets, and people are organizing at the community level for that change. And we're also seeing people organizing for change in public values around walking and talking about walking as an inherent thing that you're built to do. Physically, emotionally, and mentally, we're made to move this way. So all of these things really came into this definition, and what we underlined here are some of the key things that you'll see come through in the next couple of slides. So the walking movement being a coordinated and organized effort between many different types of organizations to reprioritize public and institutional values towards safe and just walkable communities in all places. And so that's how we're defining the walking movement for the purposes of this project. On the next slide, you'll see we pulled out these key aspects into constructs of the walking movement. So when we started this process, it was 6 months long, and we started with these very broad strokes. What are they? Revising and revising. And we narrowed it down to these constructs here. And we defined them in relationship to this specific project. And so it seems kind of simple, but we needed it to be as digestible as possible and to make it easy to understand when looking at our indicators and then our data sources. So you'll see, values, policy, diverse relationships, and strategic cross-sector collaboration, action, and equity and access. So that's how we've defined the 5 constructs that make up the walking movement. On the next slide, you'll see, as they stand right now, our indicators. So once we determined what the constructs were, we came up with a list of 30 potential indicators to measure the constructs. We looked at potential data sources, the feasibility of gathering all this information, based on capacity constraints and indicators that were the most powerful. And we narrowed it down to the ones we have here, which we consider to have the most promise for identifying data sources and which would result in the most meaningful and worthwhile long-term effect to measure. We'd like to finalize with 10 indicators, and based on where I hope this conversation is going to go, we'll see kind of as the ones that are highlighted here, if we know of any data sources, if there's anything else that we think we might be missing, that might help give us a nice round 10. So on the next slide, this is where we're asking for a little bit of help from you all. So our next step is to identify our data sources, which we have done for many of these. And thanks to our partners, we have easy access to a lot of the data. And this stuff can be things that are already existing, primary or secondary sources that may already exist, or it can be something that we can collect ourselves, but we're trying to come up with a strategic way to kind of put this plan in place. And those are going to be used to gather a set of the baseline data that I mentioned before to put that into the report on the state of the walking movement. So there's 4 bullet points here, and these are the indicators where we're still kind of looking for strategic data sources to finalize the list. And that's where we're hoping you all will come in. So as someone who's never seen this list before and kind of just learning about what we're doing here, we're wondering if there's any questions that you think are left unanswered, and if we know of any data sources or ways of collecting the data on these 4 bullet points here that may help us along the way. So that's where I guess we'd like to open it up if anyone has any questions or might want to throw anything out there for Kate and I that we might be able to work through a little bit of this.
Great, thanks, Kristen and Kate. This is Keisha. So would it be good for us to go back to the slide with the indicators and data sources on? Would that be helpful? And we can talk through those indicators?
Yeah, if you'd like to do that, that's perfect. Because that'll give you the list of this is what we're working with. And then I can kind of note for you which ones, if we need to talk about data sources.
Okay. So just to be clear, you'd just like some initial reactions to these. Is there anything that you think is missing for these constructs? And then maybe after that we can talk about some data sources as well. Is that right?
That sounds right. Yes.
Okay. Great. And please, if there's anything else in that. So let's just take a moment and open it up to everybody on the phone, and hopefully everybody can see this on the screen, to just offer some reactions to these constructs.
Keisha, hi, it's Jamie Shrieky. Can you hear me okay?
You can. Hi, Jamie.
Hi. Kate and Kristen, thanks very much for the presentation. We've actually corresponded a bit about my zoning study. And I'm just thinking on the policy measure, in addition to complete streets and safe routes, and we can correspond about this offline, but we've compiled zoning data for over 4,000 jurisdictions across the country to look at sort of the active living and walkability orientation of their zoning codes. So I'm just wondering if a measure like that might not be useful for you to include under your policy data sources.
I think that would be great. I think one of the things we've tried to do, or we'd like to do, is to have indicators that where there will be additional data collection over time. Mm-hmm. So I think this would be great. The question is, how is it? Will you be doing this again?
Yeah.
How would we follow it up so that we could track changes?
Yeah, so let's correspond about that offline, but just another thing to think about. The other thing that I was just wondering, if you're familiar with the project that Larry Frank is leading with RWJ for the National Environmental Database, because I think he's creating like a walk score too, and I didn't know if there were any other measures that they might be compiling that might be useful for you and vice versa.
Well, Kristen, you just met with Larry in Vancouver. Did you guys talk about this at all?
We did talk about this, and so that's something new that came about after we already kind of had this together, was that conversation. So I'm kind of talking with him and his team and seeing how we can use some of the stuff that they have. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and Jamie, I'll definitely get in touch with you to talk a little bit more about what you have that might work, because even if it's kind of a one-time thing, it might help in at least informing some of this information.
Right, and my data is also being incorporated into Larry's measure as well.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jamie. This is Keisha. I actually had a question for you guys. I am aware of Vision Zero initiatives around the country, and I was curious about the decision to focus on mayors signing campaigns for Vision Zero, which to me is different than having a local ordinance or something on the books for Vision Zero. I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about that. Are you interested in having those ordinances as well? Or are you really focused on the part?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. So there's a couple of things to this. One of the ways we're thinking about it is it's a change in their thought process that's leading them to implement an action. So that means that something is changing to encourage more mayors to sign this campaign. We can look at, we were talking about looking at like the actual like policies that are in place and looking at implementation, but they all look different. And so it's hard to say like what's successful or what's actually being implemented and what's just kind of on the books but not being implemented. So we thought if we took a step back and looked at mayors signing the campaigns, we can look at where it's starting. And then when we go back to this in future iterations of watching the data change, we may need to change that.
Got it. That's really helpful. You know, I think one other thing to consider is there are a number of cities that have something that aren't calling them Vision Zero. Like in Baltimore, they are calling it like Towards Zero. We've had this big conversation with DOT about why are they calling it that versus Vision Zero. And just, you know, there might be an opportunity to sort of track some of those other cities that have a similar program in place and have signed some kind of action towards that, to see if they actually move towards Vision Zero as a concept, or to see if they're doing more. But I just wonder if you're missing some places that are have like a Towards Zero initiative, but have decided not to call it, you know, Vision Zero.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I hadn't thought of that before, so I will look into it.
Great. Good. Other comments or questions on these indicators? And also feel free to mention data sources too as we're going through these. Let's see.
Sorry guys, I was trying to unmute. It's Janice.
Hey, Janice.
I think one thing, I guess in the policy side, one option would be, at least from the older adult working group, I would also encourage you to think about the AARP livability index and the age-friendly communities. Although age-friendly communities as a term is, you know, like kind of amorphous and we're not really sure what it means. And the WHO has 8 different domains that falls within, and so some of them don't necessarily touch on physical activity, but a lot of them do deal with these kind of broader level community, allowing people to age in place in their neighborhoods. And when we're talking about people who have to give up driving, that usually means walking.
Yeah.
Great point. Thank you.
No problem.
Keisha, this is Kate. While we're waiting for people to think about this, and absolutely, we are open to hearing more all the time. But one thing that we're doing, this is a plug. One thing we're doing is putting together a research and evaluation advisory team, a group to help us sort of review a whole host of research and evaluation issues that we're working on. So if anyone in PAPRN Plus would be interested in helping us with that, please let us know, because we're this is something we want to launch at the beginning of 2017. So,
oh, great.
Yeah, let us know.
Great. Feel free to send me a write-up that we can send out to the network, but can you say anything about sort of what the level of commitment is on that, or are you not ready to describe that part of this yet?
Well, I can tell you some things that are in our thinking, but I can't guarantee you it's going to be the final version. But, yeah, I mean, I don't, like maybe a couple of phone calls a year to just kind of think with us strategically about what we're doing around our evaluation and research efforts. And most of what we do is much more evaluation than actual research. But the other part would be to help us review things like, you know, maybe help us review our evaluation surveys, or like looking and helping us with the indicators. And that would send you something or get on the phone with you kind of on an as-needed basis. So it's recognizing that everyone has a full plate, and we would be asking for them to volunteer this assistance. We would try to keep the demands as minimal as possible. Great.
Thank you, Kate. We'll definitely get something out to the network, too, to ask them to reach out to you guys if they're interested in serving on that role.
And Kristen, is there anything you would want to add to that? Because Kristen's our primary evaluation research person, so you would have a better sense.
Yeah. So what we need some help with is really having someone who's outside of being kind of hands-on with a lot of this stuff to help guide us in a direction that's a little bit broader, and to ask us the question of, okay, where do we want this to go, and help us work through it. I've tried really hard to put, useful evaluations in place to start to improve some of our programs, but, at a certain point, I think I need some help from outside to help push them a little bit further. So it's definitely we're not asking for a huge lift, but, some assistance to help us maybe rethink some of the things that we're doing.
Great, that's helpful, Kristen. How many people are you looking for?
I think we're just looking for a small group, maybe like 4 or 5, right, Kate?
Right.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. We will definitely get that out.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Other comments on the indicators or data sources that we have? Again, we can always send these comments to Kate and Kristen after the call, but wanted to take some time while we were on the phone together to think through this. So maybe, Eric, you can switch to the next slide with the data sources needed, where lists sort of where they're looking for specific metrics. Like this one on the number of universities that offer accredited joint combined degrees. So are you asking for transportation and public health? Because you have transportation/planning/public health. Are you looking, what combination of those are you looking for? Or are you looking for all 3?
All 3. So, I've looked at, the websites where these programs are accredited, and I can go through them and I can search for every state and pull them. But if there's a place that a list already exists, it would make it a lot easier. So that's kind of what we're looking for.
I wonder if anybody on the phone with the planning background has any thoughts on that, or does APA have a list? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I can send. We definitely have lists of accredited planning programs, and they do, I believe, have information about joint degrees, but I could be wrong about that. So I can send that link along.
Great.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, Andy Dannenberg put together a paper that listed the joint programs. That was a couple of years ago. I'll ask him to see if he's got an update.
Great.
Thank you.
I think can you say a little bit more about the pedestrian infrastructure investment by SES and community? I thought that was an interesting topic, and wondering what would be helpful there for us in terms of guidance from us, because I suspect you'll need multiple databases, and I'm not sure how you'll get that from one sort of database unless you have zip code level data in there, or
yeah.
Something.
So, Kate, you can jump in here too, because this is one of the ones that I know you had brought to us. But one of the things we're looking at is is there a prioritization or like a key metric that's used in the allocation of funds that looks at prioritizing a decrease in disparity, or prioritizing, a look at different communities and where it's necessary to invest this money? So I don't know if Kate, if you have a better way of explaining it, that might be helpful.
Yeah, and and first of all, we don't know if this is something we can get, but we do know that there are certain MPOs that are currently using a scoring mechanism, if you will, for how their resources get allocated, so that if you are if you're filling a gap or addressing a disparity, you get some extra benefit, and we'd like to know how many MPOs are bringing something like that to their resource allocation equations, and and hopefully we'd be seeing more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's our wish list to be able to see this and to see how it changes. And it might not be realistic to do in this project, but that's why, we're asking anyone who might have more information on if something like this exists.
Mm-hmm.
Did it unmute? Hi. Guys, it's Jana. It's not necessarily, I don't know that this is what you're looking for or would be helpful, because it's more on the academic side than on the policy side. But I have been pushing for the last 2 years 2 papers that just came out this last, that both look at investments in built environment by socioeconomic status and race, as well as age. So that might be a little bit of a starting place. We ended up, I mean, we only, like, between those two studies, it's only like 11 cities, but that's maybe a starting place if you just want background research to try to justify, you know, kind of what that plan is.
Yeah, that would be great. If you can send those our way, I would really appreciate it.
T for America, or Transportation for America, just released 4 case studies on things similar to Nashville, and included in that is a formula for preferencing projects that have walking in it. So that's just on their webpage. It might be worth looking at.
Okay, great. This is all really helpful. Thank you, everyone, for sharing with us.
Good, good. I'm glad. So maybe we can, when we send out the notes from this call, we'll include your contact information and ask people to send you additional feedback on data sources and on these metrics. I know you had a couple of other slides. I don't know if you want to finish your talk, or if you want to talk, stay here for a couple more minutes.
I mean, this is all really great stuff. Anyone who wants to get in touch with us, send us an email. I'm happy to hop on the phone with anyone to talk through some more of this. Like I said, it's important to us to get this in front of as many set of eyes as possible and make sure we're covering all bases. So we can kind of wrap up this part of it. The last thing is really the summit slide, just letting you know where we're going to be, where you can find the information for the call for proposals. And something that's exciting to me is to be able to get more new and unique ideas into the summit, and some things that are backed in some research and that people can implement in their communities. So, you know, we encourage you all to send in your proposals. If you have questions, let me know. I'm the one who's fielding those questions. And then the final slide is just our contact information. So a way to get in touch with us, you can just shoot us an email, or you know, take a look on our website, see what we're up to. And I don't know if there's any other questions anyone might have for Kate or I, but that's all I've got.
Just one more comment, and this is Arlie Adkins again. So on that question of disparities and investment and you know, places that are trying, NPOs that are trying to prioritize filling that equity gap, I can talk to Jamie a little bit more about this, but it's similar to some of the things that we've talked about in the Complete Streets working group. So there may be some potential to help with that a bit.
I agree.
That would be great. That would, yeah.
Great. Well, again, well, thank you. So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
I was just going to thank you for having us and for your feedback. Really appreciate it. And I'm just going to underscore what Kristen said about applying for sending in applications or calls for proposals for the Walking Summit. Last Walking Summit, 140 proposals, and not a big evaluation-related or research-related proposals. And we'd really like to see this summit have a bit more research and evidence-based and data-driven sessions. So this is our plug to help us with that.
Kate, you broke up a little. Did you say that the last summit didn't have that many talks in sort of evaluation and research and you want more? I just want to make sure I heard.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what he said. Yes.
Thank you. All right, great. Thank you. This was terrific. Really appreciate both of you making time to present today. And again, we will get out the notes and contact information from today's talk. And I know both of you are in various places, so feel free to hang up if you have to, or we're going to just do some more updates and have Mike in our last few minutes. So thank you again.
Thank you all.
Great. So I wanted to just pull back and use our time right now in open mic to just allow people to share anything that's going on. I have a few more updates, but I will first pause and see if anybody wants to use this time to talk about projects, make a plug for something, would like to share or get feedback on things, this is the time for us to do that.
Keisha, it's Jamie. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little, but I'm interested in hearing if any of the collaborating centers are submitting abstracts for ALR. I'm just curious sort of where we are with our projects. Sandy's submitting one for us on our Google Street View results. And Sandy, I don't know if you want to briefly mention sort of the highlights of what we found with our Google Street View work.
Sure. So we conducted a pilot and we selected 10 sites that are of varying size, but it's a combination of sites that are both large and small, located in the south, but also a number of rural sites, so we could look across differences by geography, and the communities were proposively selected to have high scores on a policy provision scale that we constructed from policy scans. So basically, it's looking at the walkability and bikeability of communities, and it constructed an active living policy scale. So the scale has a total score of 12, and on average, we selected had 11.88 score on that scale. So the majority of them had all the policies that we had targeted, and then we used Google Street View to identify which ones of these policy provisions had been implemented on the ground. So it includes a lot of sidewalk provisions, presence of public transit, bike lanes, and so on, off-road trails and things like that. So on average, using the Google Street View, we were able to construct the walkability index that matches up to our policy index, and we looked at that both for the total number of street features that we found, and then we also looked at differences across median household income for communities. So we also, our sampling strategy divided our street segments into low, medium, and high income neighborhoods, and we are finding some significant differences across income, and we are also finding on average relatively lower levels of implementation. We have our walkability index for on the ground is about between 4 and 5 versus the 11.88 that we found on the policies themselves. And so that is what, in a nutshell, what we're going to be presenting at ALR, if it's accepted.
Great, Great. Thanks for that summary. Any of the other centers planning to submit something to ALR and would like to share what that is going to look like, or any of the working groups planning to submit an abstract to ALR and would like to share?
So University of Arizona has submitted one abstract. It's the first paper from our qualitative work here in Tucson. There may be a second, but I'm still trying to decide if that's going to go in the next 24 hours.
So Arlie, this is Keith. I'm in the same boat. So yeah, in the next 24 hours on our qualitative data case study research on workplaces and physical activity policies, and I'll highlight. I mean, a lot of small businesses, talk about lack of resources to do things, but we've encountered workplaces that are doing a lot with very little funding and are also writing their own grants to help support workplace initiatives. And we learned the importance of having a written policy that supports a break for employees, which has turned out to date to be the biggest barrier to people feeling like they can take time to be active throughout the day. So if I can get that finalized in the next 24 hours tonight, I will still be in as well.
And this is Jamie. I also submitted a Complete Streets abstract from our qualitative study we've been doing on implementation experiences with Complete Streets policies, so stay tuned.
And this is Arlie again. One bit of good news from our group here at the University of Arizona, not related to ALR, but we got a the community partner that we've been working with got one of the Kaboom grants.
Oh, great!
And it's exciting for us because it's really come directly out of some of the work that we've been doing through this engaged research process. So now one of the neighborhoods has gone through they now have a Safe Routes to School program and this Kaboom grant going in that we can trace back to some of the work we've been doing. So very exciting.
Terrific! Congratulations. Good. Any other plans for ALR from working groups or anything else?
From University of Rochester, I submitted the abstract too, just with some data from our program last year. We were just kind of in the implementation phase, so we actually have had some real live patients go through. So very preliminary stuff when I submitted it. I'm hoping that they approve it because then I'll have more real stuff at the time. But so hopefully we'll.
Great. Thank you.
This is Jana.
Hey, Jana.
Hello. Oh, yeah. My sound cut out a little bit, so I don't know if Jamie mentioned it, but we also submitted the Complete Streets older adult work to ALR.
Great. I'm glad to hear that there's been so many submissions. Thanks, Jamie, for that question that prompted us and to share what people are planning on submitting, and hope to see many people at ALR this year. This is one of the premier meetings for those of us interested in physical activity, and I think we have a great opportunity to showcase our work. Before we continue along here, I wanted to take a moment and just comment for a minute. Tom mentioned at the beginning, and Kate mentioned too, about our dissemination and implementation workshop, which many of you were there. And for those of you who weren't, just wanted to remind people what we're talking about. So with America Walks as the lead, PAPRN Plus and Active Living Research submitted a grant to the NIH, a conference grant, and we held a meeting at the end of August to talk about developing a research agenda around dissemination and implementation research as it relates to walking and walkability. And so we had a group of, I'm sure Amanda knows the exact number, but I like to say around 40 people maybe who participated. And Amanda, please correct me if I'm wrong on my number. But we had our working groups there, and we spent some time talking about the state of the evidence and opportunities for dissemination and implementation research. Paul Esterbrooks, who's a D&I expert, presented as well. And I think the meeting was very productive. Tom's comment earlier really kind of summarized where we were, where we identified very few interventions that were kind of ready for D&I research, and just talked about, though, the opportunities to expand on the research base and to have very clear, effective interventions that then can be disseminated and put under the rubric of implementation research. And we learned about a number of new resources and tools that can be used to help guide our work. The NIH has a specific call for dissemination and implementation research. So if you're interested in work in that area and have something, I encourage you to look at that call for proposals. And several of us are planning to write up something to summarize the meeting, and where we will be in contact with the working groups about that. We had some good feedback. We received some good evaluation data from a small sample. Maybe about half of the participants completed the survey. And we had some good feedback, and we look forward to continuing to build on this momentum.
Hey, Keisha, this is Amanda. Maybe just one final thing to add. We did have 2 webinars. I know many of you probably already participated in them as kind of precursors to this meeting that we can send around with these notes, and maybe we can link to some of the resources that NIH shared with us as well for anyone who's interested in this type of research.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. Does anybody have any other comments in our last couple of minutes on the call before I end with one final thing? Okay. All right, hearing none, I want to just thank everybody for being on the call today, and also want to say that our next call is scheduled for Thanksgiving Day, so we will move that. So please be on the lookout for a new date for that next call in November. And if you're interested in sharing work on this call, if you're looking for feedback on research, on policy, on practice, we encourage you to reach out to us and to express your willingness to have this time to engage with colleagues. So thank all of you again for your time today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Amanda or anybody else on the call, or email the general PAPRN Plus email. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks.